This section is about interactive manipulation using a function called manipulate. To get started, here is a simple example using the manipulate function. The result includes an interactive control called a slider that controls the value of a variable n, where n ranges from 1 to 5 in steps of 1, and below the slider is a list of orange squares generated by the table function. The length of the list of orange squares is determined by the value of n. Moving the slider changes the value of n, which changes the length of the list. Manipulate works a bit like the table function. Starting with that input, for example, if manipulate is replaced with table, then instead of an output with a slider, the output is a list that includes the whole sequence of possible results for n from 1 to 5. So one way of thinking about manipulate is that it is like table, except that the output from table includes results for all values of the variable, while manipulate gives a slider for choosing which result to display. Here is another example with manipulate used to display a column of powers of a number between 1 and 10. And here is that input with manipulate replaced by table. As in the first example, the result from table includes columns for all values of the variable n, while the result from manipulate gives a slider for choosing the value of n, which determines which column to display. Unlike table, however, manipulate is not limited to choosing from among a fixed set of values. In the last input to manipulate, the list that gives the range of the variable n includes a step size 1, so that the variable ranges from 1 to 10 in steps of 1. If the step size is omitted, the result from manipulate still gives a slider and a column, but now the value of n can have any value in the range from 1 to 10. One common use of manipulate is in adjusting graphics interactively. For example, this shows manipulate giving a slider for controlling bars in a bar chart. Moving the slider in this example changes the value of a variable a, which changes the bar chart. The slider provides for continuously adjusting the value of a to any value between 0 and 5. And here is a similar manipulate showing a pie chart rather than a bar chart. Manipulate can be used to control any number of variables. For example, here is a manipulate with a slider for controlling the color of a polygon and a second slider for controlling the number of sides of the polygon. Moving the slider for the variable n controls the number of sides, and moving the slider for the variable h controls the color by changing the argument in the hue function. Manipulate can also give controls other than sliders. This manipulate, for example, gives a control called a chooser or setter bar, which is just a row of buttons. That row of buttons is used here for choosing the color of a polygon. The color is controlled by clicking buttons in the row of buttons. Unlike previous examples, in this example, possible values of the color variable are given as a list of values rather than as a numerical range. Manipulate automatically uses a row of buttons as the control when the possible values of the variable are specified in this way. When there are many possible values for the variable, manipulate automatically chooses another type of control called a drop-down or pop-up menu. In this example, the possible values for the size variable are given by a result from range, which here specifies values from 12 to 96 in steps of 12 for a total of 8 possible values. When there are this many possible values, manipulate automatically uses a menu rather than a row of buttons. That's the end of the examples for this section. The only new programming vocabulary in this section is the manipulate function, which was used for setting a variable that ranges over a sequence of values, such as for setting n to range from 0 to 10 in steps of 1, and for setting a variable that can take any value in a continuous range of values. These uses of manipulate give a control called a slider, but there are several other types of controls, such as the chooser and menu controls that also came up in the examples. A good place to start to find more information about the manipulate function is the documentation for manipulate, which can be reached in a variety of ways, such as by going to the Wolfram Language and System Documentation Center and searching for manipulate. In addition to basic documentation for manipulate, this page also includes links to several tech notes, starting with a very good Introduction to Manipulate tutorial. A nice source of examples showing the broad range of things that can be done with manipulate is the Wolfram Demonstrations project, which can be found at the website demonstrations.wolfram.com. Here are the exercises from the end of this section. As an example, consider exercise 9.4. Make a manipulate to show a disk with a hue varying from 0 to 1. To get started, this draws a disk with hue of 0.1, and to vary the hue using manipulate, enter that input in manipulate, replacing 0.1 with a variable h and specifying that the variable h should go from 0 to 1.